What's going on, everybody? It's Coach Penny. This is week 3 of the Impact Athletes Fortify Training Program. The focus of this program is to build muscle and strength in an appropriate manner. So if that's something you're interested in, consider following along. So let's jump right into the weekly overview. So we're starting here. This is our session number 2 with our overhead press as our primary exercise. So here we got in week 3, our rep scheme for our primary exercise is there in blue. The first working set is 5 reps, and then the second one hops up to 85% with 3 reps. And then the final set, the highest percentage of the entire 3-week cycle, 95% for 1+ reps. So I'm able to basically perform 1 or more reps depending on how I feel. And I actually was able to get 3 reps here, which felt pretty good. Now again, we are in an accumulation phase, so we are trying to build volume over the course of the program. So here in week 3, in the 5-3-1 training program, I actually am doing a intentional overreach. So this is where I am intentionally going to do a lot more work than I have been doing. So I think something different about what an exercise specialist might do versus other people is, a lot of times people think that you need to work harder. But sometimes it's actually just about working smarter, and it's knowing what you can get away with. It's not about always doing more. It's about actually doing as little as possible to achieve the same results as somebody else might be getting by doing a lot more work, right? There's kind of that fine line where you don't necessarily need to do more to get the same results. But here in week 3, the point is to kind of overreach a little bit on the volume. So if you recall from weeks 1 and 2 of the program, we were doing 2 sets of everything. So here in week 3, we bump it up to 3 sets. So in both weeks 1 and 2, the total number of sets for the entire weeks were 33 total sets. That's weeks 1 and 2. Here in week 3 on the overreach, we're up to 45 sets. So the increase in volume here in week 3 is 27%, which is really significant. That's a lot more work than I was already doing. And that's in anticipation for the recovery that will occur next week in the deload week, where if you recall from episode 1, how I do a deload week where I'll still be getting work in, but it'll be at much lighter percentages and kind of a active recovery type of thing. So I'm definitely going to be more sore from these workouts this week, because typically that higher volume is going to get you kind of sore. But that's knowing that I have some rest coming on the way, and it should boost me just moving forward into cycle number 2 in week number 5. So here you can see I'm doing an exercise called a Lou bend, which is actually pretty interesting. This is the first time I've ever done it in a program, and I got it from a Chinese Olympic weightlifter. I don't know if the whole team does it or what, but there's a guy named Lou on the Chinese Olympic team, and this is an exercise I saw him doing, and it's kind of just targeting the QL muscles in your lower back, the quadratus lumborum. And so I just wanted to try it out. I've been kind of toying around with just like how I can fortify my core, and this is an exercise I wanted to try out. And it's been interesting, from the looks of it, you're like, it's obviously, it can be like a little bit shocking. It's like, whoa, what are you doing? But it feels good. Like, I definitely feel my QL light up when I'm doing it, and I like it. So it was interesting. And I was doing 20 sets of 20 each way. So let's see. Something else to consider with these supersets, so I'm doing the Lou bend and then I'm going straight into a wader carry, is after I finish each exercise, I'm only resting 45 seconds and I'm jumping straight into the next set. So doing these exercises with a long rest period wouldn't be that difficult, but when you come back and you only rest for 45 seconds, that really adds an extra element to the challenge, and it actually really incorporates a bit of endurance, because your heart rate's elevated the whole time. You're not allowing yourself full recovery, and so I actually really enjoy that. That's something in the past that I haven't focused on a lot either. I'll just take a rest period until I feel ready to go, but I've really been focused on cutting that rest period down, especially when the training focus is volume and it's not strength. So to to look at the other side of the coin, when I'm doing my primary sets and the focus is strength, I usually have a timer set for 3 minutes, and I'm resting 3 to 5 minutes. I don't care because the goal is strength. But here, I'm just trying to accumulate volume, and I'm really just focused on a little bit of general physical preparedness. That's GPP. So it's okay to have that rest period down and kind of have that elevated heart rate. My focus is not having the weights high. It's actually just having, it's really just, actually, getting some conditioning in. Let's see. Something else to think about, and what I really enjoy about this program is the variation. So as you can see just from all the weeks of training so far, the first 4 episodes, no workout has been the same. So I have some of the same exercises, but the sets and the rep schemes are always changing, and I really enjoy that. I kind of mentioned that before. I can get really bored with an exercise program, but something I really love about this program, the way it is that it's always something new to expect, and I really enjoy that because it just has me excited for training each week, knowing that there's going to be a little something different. So here is superset number 2, and something I wanted to point out here. And if you look at the workout thing, I'm doing inverted rows and I'm building up to 60 reps. So I'm just doing 60 total reps. So it's actually going to end up being more sets than these push-up holds where I'm just holding this bottom position. But something to notice here is if you look at my low back, I actually have a bit of hyperlordosis, which is kind of like an excessive curve in your low back. And it's just funny because you tend to see most people possibly having the opposite happen. And it really just points to, obviously it's something that I need to work on. But if you think about like social media and like YouTube and just like fitness advice that you get online, something that you'll commonly see is like, okay, you need to stretch your hip flexors, right? We're sitting all the time, so it's really important to stretch your hip flexors. And that's something I remember hearing like years back, and I kind of was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I began stretching my hip flexors a lot. And I'm not saying, I think I already had that hyperlordosis going on, but one of the worst things you can do if that's happening is stretching your hip flexors, because that's just having longer hip flexors is just going to facilitate that problem. What you actually need to do is tighten up those hip flexors and those abs. And that's another thing you'll hear is, you don't want to do crunching exercises, curl up exercises, because we're already sitting in that kind of posture all the time, which I somewhat agree with. But at the same time, just because you're sitting in that posture all the time and your knees or your hips are always flexed, that doesn't mean that those hip flexors are strong or they're overly strong. They might be a little bit stiff just from a lack of movement and being stuck in that position. So there's nothing wrong with stretching them. But whenever you're stretching something, it's always a good idea to complement that stretch with strengthening. It's stretching and strengthening. You don't ever just want to stretch or strengthen. You want to do both. So something I think I kind of like went overboard on is I stopped doing ab exercises for the reasons I described. Started doing a lot of hip flexor exercises. And I'm kind of considering this a lot lately and thinking like, man, that's probably a lot of what led to some of the tweaks in my low back. I was like facilitating that hyper curve in my low back. And so I recently went to a chiropractor, just not for anything in particular. I just kind of was preventative maintenance. I wanted to hear what they had to say, and they took an x-ray. And they basically confirmed that for me, that, they told me, oh yeah, you have like a little bit of a curve, an excessive curve. And I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting, because a lot of times I'm focused on like doing, like I mentioned, spinal flossing. I'll sit in the prone cobra position on the floor, where I'm really trying to get that back extension, which is great for your upper back, and I'll continue to do those things. But I guess all of that just to say that because I've kind of recognized that issue with that hyperlordosis, is I've kind of been focusing on doing some hip flexor and ab training a little bit more than I have in the past. So if you recall from episode 3, I was starting the workout with some toes to bars, and I've been doing that basically with every workout. I've just been starting with a set or two of toes to bar, and then I've been doing some other exercises to target the hip flexors, and of course, again, just like some abdominal crunches and things like that. So I'm really going to try to see what I can do in terms of fixing that problem, because I think it's just been probably an issue. And the other thing too is just making sure that you're getting your glutes to fire. So like I obviously have like decent sized glutes, but I notice like when I stand sometimes I just kind of like relax instead of actually engaging them. So that's probably something more I need to focus on as well. And lastly, something I wanted to bring up too is you'll notice this is the last week of training, at least with the high intensity in the program, week 3, and I got up to that 95% intensity on my final set of my core lift, so that military press. And you'll notice that on that lift, the bar moved fast. And something you'll notice probably in all my training videos is the bar. I don't ever have slow grinding reps, and this is probably one of the biggest keys you can have when it comes to training safely and appropriately. There's no need for people to be lifting a weight that you can't rip off the ground fairly quickly. Like if there's sticking points, that's probably a weight that's too heavy for you. And at that point, like what is the what is the benefit from grinding that out? That's totally like scratching your own ego. It's like if you had to grind, if it took you 5 seconds to stand up with a weight, like that's cool. Like you got it. Like good for you, but you probably actually just did more harm than good in terms of like damaging your body. Versus for me, like when I did my I maxed out on my deadlift a month ago, maybe a little bit more. I think I pulled 335 off the floor, and it came off the floor really quick, but I knew I wasn't going to do any more reps. But still, I know that, I could probably pull 360 off the floor. I could do it, but I don't need to do it, right? I feel good. I hit 335, and I know it came up quick, and I know I have more in the tank, but there's no need for me to keep pushing on to that next weight because I know that there's no point just so I can say that I did it. I know that I can probably do it, and I'm going to adjust my percentages, and I'm going to keep moving on. But I think that's a common problem people see. When I see people lifting like slow grinding reps, and you see it with younger people, and like they can get away with it, but it's going to catch up to you, and you can't do that for very long because it's going to be a point when that's just going to lead to an injury. And so I think that if people could focus on moving the bar quickly, and as soon as you start to feel there's just too much struggle, like just stop. There's no point. Like like okay, I probably had one more in the tank, and so you can kind of make an estimation of what your max probably is, but there's no point to actually lift it. So that does it. Episode 4 is in the books. Hey, listen, the whole reason I'm making this series is just to provide some insights and rationale into my own training program that ideally will help you guys out with your training. So, hey, it would be really great if you guys had any questions. Please send them to me, comment them, whatever. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead, like it, maybe send it to a friend. Until next time, keep it moving.